Dr. Jerry Punt.
Alexander suffered head injuries. The preliminary reports were cause for real concern. And, of course, there is irony here. That is that Mike drove Bobby Allison's Winston Cup car the last half of the year after Bobby suffered a serious head injury at Pocono. As Alexander lay unconscious in intensive care, the understandable reaction was, here we go again. But within 48 hours, Mike was awake, off the critical list, out of intensive care. He has a broken shoulder in addition to a slight concussion. He'll spend his off-season healing up, but he's going to be okay. The race itself, a good one, from the launch of the balloons to the fall of the checkered flag. Well after dark, local hero here, Rick Crawford, puts his black 14 out front, dominated early. Run before the largest crowd in the 21-year history of the Snowball Derby. The race saw Crawford so strong that he actually had time to spin the car, end up facing the wrong way, get back into the action without losing the lead. But the end-for-end honors went to series regular. This is Eddie Hanks, whose turn 4 twister brought the crowd to its feet. Eddie responded to all the attention by getting involved in this three-way thriller on the other side of the track, but kept on trucking both times. Now, we in television are sometimes criticized for showing all the wrecks. That's the 3-time All-American Challenge champ, Dave Mader. He's exceeding the limits of traction here. In fact, it is worse than that. Our cameras actually cause wrecks. Now, watch this. 41 cars on the half mile. Mr. Camera singles out Reg Hellett for no reason whatsoever and says, watch me spin this guy out. And sure enough, down in turn 1, Reg goes around, and poor Dale Hirschfield has to take the Pine Tree exit ramp in order to miss him. Now watch as Eddie Mercer tried to sandwich through the traffic. He gave Tim Nooner a little nudge in the left rear. That was nothing compared to the big nudge in the right side door that Tim had sustained a little earlier. A lap later, Mercer gets by cleanly. He's a Pensacola boy, hometowner. He and Crawford are both past late model division champs at 5 Flags. We watch now as Mike Alexander leads number 52, Butch Miller. They both led the race, Alexander before his crash and Miller before blowing an engine. And if you've ever been to the Snowball, you recognize this. The ageless Red Farmer has raced all 21 Snowball Derbies. He's had the pole, led the race, finished everywhere from second on back, but he's never won it. Kept his record intact on Sunday. He ran 7th. Unfortunately, it was getting dark by the time the eventual winner emerged from that fray. Thus, no victory pictures, but congratulations nonetheless to Ted Musgrave, who ran a low-compression V6, played a waiting game, and won that race when Jody Ridley pitted for tires late in the event.
In drag racing, home videographer Patsy Stathis captured a frightening moment at Bradenton, Florida over the weekend. Georgian Richard Holcomb was shaking down his new Top Fuel car, and look what happened. The machine flipped entirely over on its back, tumbled, and burst into flame. We'll take a slow-motion look at a Top Fuel cowboy's worst nightmare. The really incredible fact is that Holcomb walked away from this wreck with nothing worse than a broken finger. Unbelievable. That race at Bradenton was also marred by a tragic freak accident that claimed the life of a giant among drag racing crew chiefs. Herb Parks was a low-budget dragster driver in the mid-'70s when Don Garlitz hired him, and the result was championship chemistry. Herb was Big Daddy's crew chief through 1980, stepped away from active competition for nearly 4 years, then rejoined Garlitz for his remarkable 1985 and 86 World Championships. Sunday at Bradenton, Parks' driver Rocky Epperly had done a burnout, and Herb stepped behind the car to mark the ground where he wanted the car to back up. Epperly didn't know Parks was there and backed the car over him. Parks suffered head injuries and died Monday in a nearby hospital.
And oval racing lost a legend this week. Along the eastern seaboard, particularly in the Northeast, modifieds have long been a favorite of local track fans. Over the years, the open-wheelers have changed their look from time to time. In the 60s, they looked something like this. They battled on ovals whose names are inscribed in the racing history of the region: Nazareth, Reading, Flemington, Vinelands, Atco, and the king of the modifieds was Al Tasnady. In a 23-year career, Al won more than 600 races and season championships at all the aforementioned tracks, plus 3 or 4 more. The list of Al's modified records in first, very impressive. First to win 4 features in one day, first to have an organized fan club, first inductee to the Eastern Motorsports Association Hall of Fame, and the state of New Jersey presented him with its prestigious Garden State Pioneer Award. Al Tasnady died Monday of cancer in Pennsylvania at the age of 58.
A
Attention motorcycle fans, this important phone number is your key to exciting video action. Call 1-800-426-5790 today and get the best of motorcycling. That's 1-800-426-5790 for spectacular two-wheeled highlights from the Motorweek Illustrated video library. You'll relive the great performances, meet the fascinating personalities. Don't be left out. Don't delay. Call 1-800-426-5790 now for the best of motorcycling.
Oh, Harold, it's lovely.
I hope you like it.
It reminds me of when we first got electric light back when I was a child.
Oh.
Daddy used to draw his chair up to that light and read to us. Oh, the memories. But Harold, this is the 80s. And I wanted a Bud Light.
If you want the one light that outshines them all, ask for Bud Light.
Kill the light, will you, Harold?
Because everything else is just a light.
These are works of genius. Shakespeare, Melville, the Genesis from Chinon. That's what the critics are saying. Remarkable, said Popular Photography. Full of advanced engineering, says Time magazine.
In 1981, when NASCAR first held its year-end Winston Cup stock car banquet at the Waldorf Astoria in New York, the event was treated as an oddity. The bumpkins go to the big city. Junior Johnson in a tux. What's the world coming to? But that first Big Apple banquet also made a statement about the future relationship of the good old boys and Madison Avenue. And 7 years later, there could be no better place for this party because glitz and glitter and thanking the corporate sponsors is what this affair is all about. Former cab driver Phil Parsons is a measure of how far the stock car guys have come.
One word. About 20 years ago, I was pouring Unical oil in my dad's taxi cabs. That's where we got 35 grand for Leo and Richard pouring Unical oil in our race cars. I worked for my dad for about 10 years until I moved down south, and that's a lot more than I made in those 10 years, $35,000. Thank you.
Several things stood out in my mind about the banquet. Look at that top 10. Oldest guy up there, Darrell Waltrip. Seems only yesterday he was leading the so-called Young Lions. Veteran Bobby Allison had a moment in the spotlight. Bobby stepped up to accept the NASCAR Award of Excellence for '88. Gold-plated Thunderbird, really the symbol of this affair. Bill Elliott got that from Goodyear, the Georgia boy stuffing well over $500,000 in the pocket of his tux Saturday night. And R.J. Reynolds in the headlines all week with their corporate takeover stories added a headline of their own. Chris Economaki has that story.
The 1988 Winston Cup season ended on the highest of high notes Saturday night at the famed Waldorf Astoria in New York City. The Grand Ballroom, 1,050 seats capacity, 3 levels, every seat occupied for this annual awards banquet. And what happened? Well, $2.5 million was distributed to NASCAR competitors, and champion Bill Elliott took home $626,000. But more importantly, less than 24 hours after the breakup of RJR Nabisco was announced, R.J. Reynolds Tobacco announced it would increase its contribution to the NASCAR Point Fund for 1989 by $500,000, so that the champion next year will receive $1 million at this banquet. In addition, there's a $1 million racing day coming up, too, at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. The Winston Open and the Winston will collectively be worth $1 million to NASCAR competitors. It's been a great season. All the beautiful people of NASCAR, high corporate executives are here at a climax to the greatest racing season this country has ever known.
It's our resident beautiful person, Chris Economaki. The predictable response to all those dollars, all these thank yous. Expressions of appreciation went on and on and on.
I'd just like to thank
Winston Cup champion Bill Elliott at least warned us before starting into his long list.
Better kick your shoes off because this might take a while, that's all I can say.
Well, of all the thank yous uttered, I thought the most sincere was reserved for these guys. Up in the balcony, Bill's crew, sharing the moment in the spotlight at the end of the long road to the top.
And I thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
For the 5th straight year, the fans voted Bill Elliott most popular driver. Other Waldorf news, Rick Mast got the wild card starting spot in February's Busch Clash at Daytona, and the prestigious Meyer Brothers Award went to stock car pioneer Paul Sawyer for his renovation of the historic Richmond Fairgrounds Speedway.
Bobby Allison's NASCAR Award of Excellence is all the excuse we need to recall one of Bobby's big upset victories, captured for all time in this page from Ken Squire's Quaker State Motorsports scrapbook.
November 1974, Ontario, California. Entering the final race of the Winston Cup season at the Grand Ontario Motor Speedway, one question stood out. Could anyone beat A.J. Foyt in Ontario? In the only two previous NASCAR races on the facility, the then three-time Indy 500 winner had swept both pole and race. At the start of the LA Times 500, Foyt and his number 28 Chevrolet once again moved out front, chased by Bobby Allison, Cale Yarborough, and Richard Petty. Near halfway, Yarborough, Foyt, and Petty ran three wide, lap after lap, around the mammoth 2.5-mile track. But in so doing, they had run each other out of the race. With a perfect pace, Bobby Allison came from behind to give American Motors and car owner Roger Penske their biggest NASCAR victories. After his life-threatening accident in Pocono this year, Bobby Allison is contemplating retirement. But then again, he might be back to win another Daytona 500. I'm Ken Squire. Join me next week for another page from my Quaker State scrapbook.
Thank you, Ken. Speaking of A.J. Foyt, Supertex's ongoing role as benefactor of upcoming drivers now extends to family friend Tony George. Tony is the grandson of the late Indianapolis Motor Speedway owner Tony Holman, and A.J. says, quote, "I've known the kid since he was born." Tony has raced Formula Fords, Formula Atlantics, and Super Vs. Next year, A.J. will sponsor him in the American Racing Series. And we'll be right back after this timeout.
The International Press Corps busy this week, examining in minute detail the visit of Soviet Premier Mikhail Gorbachev to the U.S. His face-to-face meeting with President-elect Bush could set the tone for 4 years of superpower relations. Overlooked amid all the diplomacy, the real reason for Gorby's visit. He is a Russian race fan, and he came here not for the Washington meetings, but to follow the Russian go-kart team in battle against the Americans in Peoria, Illinois, of all places. And what did the Russian guys think about this red, white, and blue opportunity to go racing?
Нет, у нас, по трассам, как в стадионах, так нет, никогда не было.
Got it, Arnis. I think what he says is he likes cheeseburgers and American women, but he thinks go-kart races should run on racetracks and not hockey rinks. They checked the competition licenses, they checked the passports, and then they sent the Russians out to do battle with the Americans, who sat by on the sidelines and watched them for a few laps. That's John Andretti on the near end.
Well, I think that it's an honor to have the opportunity to race against the Russian and Canadian go-kart drivers on our home ground, and from what I understand is if everything goes right, then we'll go over to Russia and race over there.
And if the superpowers wise up and decide to settle their differences with karts instead of nukes, we nominate Andretti as our designated driver. He's the winner. John, what do you think of the Russians?
They're very friendly. However, the only way I can communicate with them is by my Italian heritage, and that's with my hands.
Despite the fact that it was an American victory, the Russians were subjected to the humiliation of that traditional American victory lane. They all gave away their hats, though, to the American drivers.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of good action and banging into each other and a lot of international conflicts here today.
And the international conflicts continue this weekend. Rosemont Horizon outside Chicago, Superpower Showdown, Part 2. Here's a couple of the female stars of USAC midget racing. On the right, Bev Griffiths. We've seen her before, but on the left, her challenger, the rookie sensation, 16-year-old Lisa French, got most of the pre-race attention. But once they threw the green flag, it was all men, specifically the man in the yellow car with the white helmet. That is Mel Kenyon, who had not won an indoor race in over a dozen years. But Mel, the all-time master of the midget division, stayed on the inside groove all night, got under Jimmy Hines on lap 30, took the lead, and went on to win the race.
I adjusted the car wrong, and I had to set the car differently, and I had to wait for my tire to heat up. And so once everything got going, we were in pretty good shape.
And speaking of pretty good shape, check out these demonstrations of precision handling. The amateur go-kart guys obviously had their machines dialed into perfection in Part 3 of the Peoria tripleheader. Good competition for the Midwestern drivers here as they had at it on the floor of the hockey arena in Peoria, rounding out a big weekend of action there. Always nice to see a racer end a losing streak. Mel Kenyon must have figured he'd lost the touch that won him 110 indoor midget features. But for win number 111 and for the end of a decade-long indoor victory drought, Mel Kenyon earns the honors as Motorweek Illustrated Racer of the Week.
Down in Texas, fans said farewell to the '88 midget season, but there are at least a couple of drivers who are probably just as glad to get it over with. We take you to Big H Speedway in Houston, Texas, where the Friday night Smash 'em Up was provided by Jackie Burke and J.R. Miller on the backstretch. Despite appearances, both drivers were okay. Glad to see the season done. David Burns is your winner.
I'll bet they're glad it's over. We're going to follow an old friend into a new form of racing when Motorweek continues.
Two-time world sports car champion Derek Bell is an old friend here at Motorweek, and in the past year we've enjoyed teasing Derek about his less-than-sterling debut as a rally driver. That debut came at this time last year in the biggest event of the British racing winter, the Royal Automobile Club Rally. Last year, the hoopla surrounding Bell's presence in his home event threatened to overshadow the fact that this is also the final race of the World Rally Championship. But just a few stages into the event, our man Derek got his feet wet in rallying in more ways than one. When Bell boldly splashed into a water hazard, he had to be pushed out. His big race in front of the home fans already over. This year, Bell was back in harness to try to recoup, which begs the question why a five-time winner of the 24 Hours of Le Mans would try something different at this stage of his career.
I'm doing it because I wanted to do the RSC rally. I'd love to finish the rally, because I just love to know what it's like to do it. I mean, people say, oh, but it must be easy. But I spoke to someone last night, he's done it 10 times and never finished. And it's like going to Le Mans. I mean, I take it for granted finishing Le Mans now, but I know a lot of people have been there, and it's a challenge to finish.
Well, now it's only fair to report that Derek has, in fact, finished the RAC rally, and respectably, we might add, 29th out of 179 starters. After the 5-day grind, he also announced his immediate retirement from rally driving. We'll have all the highlights of the RAC event on next week's edition of Motorweek.
Mission accomplished, eh, Derek? For race fans, the lingering death of California's Riverside Raceway brings to mind a troubling picture, a track being bulldozed to make way for houses. But the story in Illinois this week is just the opposite. For that, let's go to Rick Benjamin.
Turning this into this will require a lot of this before late 1990. But the developer of a proposed $34.5 million superspeedway in Carbon Cliff believes his plan is on track.
This facility has been a dream of mine, like I said, for 7 years now, and this is truly the first time that I've really been able to say that this is going to happen.
Bulldozers tore down several abandoned buildings on a corner of the projected Speedway property today where the track's offices will be placed. State lawmakers say financing for the project is nearly complete.
We need $8 million from the governor's office or from the state of Illinois in order to make this project work.
For the state, the payoff will be in jobs and economic development.
We're talking jobs in the category probably $22,000 to $28,000, $30,000 a year jobs. What the overall idea is, and it's something that we're not really in a position to overplay, but we also don't want to downplay the possibility of bringing much of the other end of the I-5 corridor to the Quad Cities at a much cheaper price.
The key to the project, though, will be the availability of race dates from the country's major sanctioning bodies, NASCAR and CART, which holds races for Indy cars. And the dates won't be firm until the track is built, but Massa is confident.
Race dates are going to be in place before we totally build the track. I would assume possibly NASCAR would add a date to make it 30 again like they had previously. And CART, I think part of the problems with racing today is that there aren't facilities to do racing in, and they're doing a lot of racing in the streets. And obviously if they had a good track to race on, they'd be there.
The track will accommodate 80,000 fans who will watch events on a 1.5-mile tri-oval along with an infield road course. Massa hopes to break ground this summer.
It'll be more than 2 years before a major racing event can be staged here. But if today's demolition is any indication, it appears that the proposed Quad Cities International Raceway Park project is very much on track. Rick Benjamin reporting for Motorweek Illustrated, Carbon Cliff, Illinois.
Pop quiz, name the Quad Cities.
Didn't we do this once before? Davenport, Bettendorf, Moline, and Rock Island. It's easy for an Iowa boy. I'll believe that racetrack when I see it, but they're giving it a heck of a try, and for that, they're going to get our U.S. Air Force Reserve Commander's Performance Award. It goes to the team who put together the concept for the new facility. We wish them luck and give them our congratulations from the 910th Tactical Airlift Group, Youngstown International Airport in Pennsylvania. And we'll be back with more right after this timeout. Split from Roush to race for Chevrolet. Dallenbach, the '85 Series champ, joined the mutiny and said he'd never race for Roush Racing again. In '86, Wally successfully defended his Trans Am title in a Protofab Camaro. Now this year, he switched to a Protofab Corvette for GTO, eventually finished second in the standings to Roush driver Scott Pruitt. And during the season, Dallenbach said privately he never wanted to race sedans again. He has his sights set on an IndyCar career. Well, Wally today is pondering the truth of the never say never adage. This week we learned that Roush Racing has apparently signed its driver for the '89 GTO Series, and that driver is Wally Dallenbach Jr. Ironically, never say never Wally is left alone in the sedan ranks while all the other players in the story head for Indy. In returning to Roush, Dallenbach will replace Pruitt. He'll drive the Budweiser IndyCar next year. And Protofab is pulling out of sedan racing in favor of, you guessed it, IndyCars. And finally, the Protofab IndyCar driver will be John Jones, who was Wally Dallenbach's former teammate on the Protofab GTO team.
There will also be a driver change in the all-conquering Nissan Camel GTP car. We hear that John Morton will vacate that seat and move to one of Nissan's 2 new GTO cars next season. The second Nissan GTO will be piloted by New Zealander Steve Millen. All the Nissans, including the GTP and GTO entries, plus a new GTU team, will get new paint jobs for '89. Valvoline, we understand, is negotiating to be the team sponsor for the 1989 season. That leaves the question of who will co-drive the P car with Jeff Brabham. We wondered about Valvoline-sponsored Al Unser Jr., who could team with Brabham on a non-conflicting basis. Our sources say that's unlikely, except perhaps for the upcoming 24 Hours of Daytona. Looks like we'll have to wait for next week's official announcement to find out.
Elsewhere, former offshore boat racer Ben Kramer, one of 2 men sentenced this week to life in prison on a marijuana smuggling charge. Third defendant in that same case is Randy Lanier, the former sports car and IndyCar racer, who will be sentenced on December 21st. And Bob, we have time to leave today with our favorite story about Al Tasnady. Taz said his favorite victory was at Dover, New Jersey. Coming down for the final restart, he realized he had a broken kingpin and a leaking radiator and that his race was all over. They came for the green flag. The grandstand collapsed. The race was over and Al won.
What a great story. That's all we have time for this week. I'm Bob Varsha. For Dave Despain, the storyteller, Chris Economaki, and Ken Squire. See you next week.
If you're looking for a challenge, take it from me, Bruce Jenner, and join the winners. In today's Air Force Reserve, it's a great way to serve.
Motorweek Illustrated was brought to you by Budweiser, Beechwood aged for that clean, crisp taste. This Bud's for you. By Ford and your Ford dealer, together winning the world over with the exciting line of 1989 Ford cars. Have you driven a Ford lately? And by BF Goodrich TAs and the all-weather Comp TA.
To sustain a